back again today talking about really leading. What does it mean to be a leader in your life and in your business? A topic that is really near and dear to me because I work with a lot of leaders. And some of them have businesses, and quite frankly, some of them do not. Um, I work with mainly business owners, but every once in a while someone comes to me or think about starting a business and they realize they don't want to. They continue to work with me because they realize they do want to lead. And a big thing is figuring out, what does that mean? And I always think it really starts with leading in your own life. Because when you lead in your life, it becomes infinitely easier to lead others, whether it's in a business, it's a club organization, or some kind of movement. And what I find is even those that I work with who aren't leading a business, they are leading some kind of movement. They are kind of coming up with new things to birth into the world. They're just birthing them in differently. But what connects all of them is this desire to lead in a way that is not authoritarian, but is authentic, is generous, is giving. We talked a little bit about, not giving from an empty well, right? Making sure that you're completely nourished and that all of your needs are taken care of. And that is one major component to leading, to make sure that you're well taken care of, because people are looking to you. They're looking to you. They're trying to, sometimes they're aspiring to be like you. Sometimes they're depending on you for whatever it is, especially if you're in business, to keep the thing in business, right? But they're looking to you to lead. Therefore, you have to be well nourished. You have to be ready at a moment's notice to give from that overflow. So that's one component of leading. Another component of leading is to have a really clear vision. This is one of the things that I'm going to be talking a lot about in Soulful Reset, but that's going to be really important, is to have a clear vision. So we're going to spend time on just getting that clarity. And I have a couple of obviously tips and tricks to get to that clarity that not only that we'll use during that time, but that you can use over and over again. Why is it that you would use it more than once? Because this is what I found personally, and what I found as I was working with clients is over time, priorities change because life changes. You hit a certain milestone, you look around and you realize, oh, what I thought was the best way there, or what I thought was the thing I wanted, it's actually something a little bit different. So we take another path, and then there's this whole getting clear. Am I being distracted? Or is this actually the way I'm supposed to go? Because life takes us on a journey, and that journey is not a straight line.
Say, we're not talking about this or this. We're talking about this.
Right. I wish it was. I wish that, the thought I had when I was a little kid that I wanted to be a doctor, and that I just went straight line from there to doctor. That's not what happened. Life happened along the way. Did I zero a little bit more in on what kind of doctor? Yes. By like 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be a pediatric anesthesiologist. And then from there, I kind of drove myself that way until college. And then during college, things started to shift. I had other experiences. And I realized I could serve in a deeper capacity in a different way. You're just not where you thought you were going to go. That's just because life doesn't lead us in a straight line. It leads us on all these curves, and loop-de-loops and down bunny trails and all this kind of stuff, which is why the exercise on clarity, or actually exercises on clarity, have to be done more than once during your life. Usually, sometimes big decision, great time for a clarity exercise. Sometimes it's just something that you build into the calendar that you're doing a couple of times a year just to be clear on where you're going, to be clear on those goals. I'm a huge proponent in this little bunny trail. I'm a huge proponent of 90-day cycles. Why? I know everyone's like, oh, think of where you're going to be in 10 years or think of where you're going to be in 5 years. And I don't necessarily find that to be what's needed for most people. It's good to have big long term goals, but either you make them too grandiose or you make them too small, because our concept of time, and time is just a construct anyway, but our concept of time itself leads us to kind of think too big or think too small, especially the further out it is. However, pretty much everyone is aware of what they can get done in 90 days. They're aware of their constraints, they're aware of things that are coming up, right? Because we know life happens, some things completely out of the blue, but other things we know they're on our schedule, right? So when we look at life in 90-day chunks, and this is really part of leadership, is understanding what can and can't be done in a reasonable period of time. So I really encourage you to look at 90-day chunks because it's a reasonable period of time to figure out what can be done. So I always hear about quarterly planning and stuff like that. So when you look at it that way, you can decide, this is what I'm going to do. These are the things I need to get together, the resources to get this done, or whether or not that 90 days is all about garnering resources and getting things set up so you can execute the following 90 days. All those things come up and come together, right? And part of being a leader is understanding that. So I encourage you, 90-day chunks, 90-day chunks for planning. It doesn't matter if this is life or business, 90-day chunks. You're going to have the greater success. Along with that, and this is something I think I learned as I was working in corporate that was so good, is just reviewing every couple of weeks. Are we on the right trail? Are we not on the right trail? What do we have to do to pivot, right? Being very aware of your goals, wherever those goals are. And I have a lot of friends and clients and self that, we like to be in flow, right? Just be in flow. Let the universe take you wherever you want. And there is something to be in flow, and while being in flow, you have to know when you need to depart from the river, right? And go and get sustenance and then get back in the flow river. You have to have a destination. If you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which way you go. So having that destination, having some kind of overall goal will allow, or where you're not allowing's the wrong word. You can actually co-create with the universe where you want to go. Right? This is a co-creative process. This isn't a surrender and let's see what happens process. This is co-creative. So that's part of leading too. Some people don't like to be in charge of their own lives. Some people like having someone else set the agenda. Leaders do not. Leaders do not. You set your agenda. You know what you're doing when you wake up in the morning. Right? Maybe you've planned it the night before, and I have a whole process around that. Maybe you planned it the night before. You know what you're doing when you wake up in the morning, and you get to it. You don't allow emails, social media, and all the things to come in and blow up your plans. Right? Even in your life, we know that, like I said, life happens. So when I work with people and I say, okay, you're a leader, that means you don't have a to-do list that's 100 miles long. That's not leading. That means that you know what's yours to do and what is someone else's to do and what doesn't need to be done at all. Right? What's yours to do, what someone else's to do, and what doesn't need to be done at all. That's really important. So you only have a couple of things that you are in charge of doing every day. And what those couple of things, life can happen. Right? Part of leading is making sure you leave space for life to happen. Why? Life happens to us all. And I had this wonderful message come up. A friend of mine's trying to connect me with someone in the area, and we did that conversation and messenger where she's connecting us, and I say hi and the lady says hi, and then there's just nothing for days. I think it might have been a week. I really wasn't paying attention because I'm doing my thing. But as it happens, that lady came back and she's like, I'm so sorry. You wouldn't believe all the things that's happened to me in the last week. And I thought, yeah, life happened. And I wrote back, not a problem. Life happens to us all. This for me really came to a head where I just really noticed it is when I was in my early 20s and I was teaching at the community college, and I would notice it with my students. Now, most of my students, I have to say, were even older than me, which was an interesting dynamic. But I noticed it there that life just would happen. Now, there's certain things we can do to mitigate some of the extremes of crazy and chaos happening, right? And that's something that I work with my clients with over time. Again, that's part of leading, that you can spot the BS coming and handle it, or you have processes in place so that it mitigates it happening at all, right? And we work together to get those things in place for folks and teach them how to spot problems, like how to spot the iceberg before it hits you, right? How to do those things. But there's some things that just come out of the blue. We don't have control over. We don't see them coming, and there's no mitigation factor in the world that could have prevented it, right? So, boom, life happens. And what I noticed when I was teaching is a lot of times when life would happen to my students, boom, that was it. They were out for the count. I didn't see them again that semester, right? It's only if I would run into them somewhere that say, oh, ma'am, this is what happened. I'm like, why didn't you come back? Why didn't you do this or that? And so I started to write down a list of all the different things. It took a couple of years before I got my list together. And at the beginning of the semester, I would just say to people, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. Just because I guess they never really thought about it. It didn't matter how young or how old they were. They were so used to being bombarded with life happening, they had no way to think through how to mitigate. And maybe no one to talk to, especially at the community college level, on how to mitigate, because they were probably the first in their family to even go to college, right? So there's all these things going on. And so I encourage you to take the time to think. And again, it just takes some strategic thinking. It does take talking maybe to some other people, some colleagues, friends, and family, joining a program like I have, where you start to learn how to spot things and learn how to mitigate things before they happen. That is a huge part of leading, because you can't lead or be like the captain of the ship and the ship's bouncing around everywhere. As people start to say, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe the ship isn't stable. Maybe the captain doesn't know what they're doing. And usually, even before the people think that, you start to think that. You start to think, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe someone else needs to take the wheel. Maybe someone else needs to tell me what to do with my life. And let me tell you right now, love bug, I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to be in charge of your own life. I want you to be in charge of your destiny. I want you co-creating to make things happen. That is leading. So I could go on and on, but I could tell time's getting short. I would love to hear your thoughts on what it means to lead in your life and in your business. And like I said, for me, it's really remembering that people are looking to you for direction, looking to you to feel safe, to feel secure. That's huge. So when you think of it just in just those simple terms, what does that mean? That means that you have to feel good about you. You have to make self-care a priority, because you're giving from your overflow. We glow up so much when we feel good about ourselves, when we're nurturing ourselves, when we're giving from overflow. People can tell when you're wound down and tired. And sometimes when you're in the midst of a battle, so to speak, that's perfect that they see that you're getting back up again and again. And oh my gosh, this is why I forgot to mention about like my students back then versus my clients now, or even with some of my students, I got them to this. When life happens, and again, it happens to us all, it's not necessarily about, well, it is about trying to mitigate things, trying to see them before they come and having processes in place so it doesn't happen so often. And it's also about getting back up again. It's also about being resilient. And again, that's something else that we talk a lot about when we talk about leading in your life and business, is being resilient. And what I saw back then when I was teaching is my students were not very resilient. Yeah, resilient just was not a thing that they knew anything about. Whereas when I started coaching and I'm working with business owners, some of them were not very resilient. And so they had these months of up and down and up and down and up and down, because they would get knocked and they would stay knocked and they would stay there and wallow in it for months, weeks, months. And then it's like, okay, oh, now I gotta get going again and get it going, get it going, get it going. And that's so much energy and so much stress. Some just, I've watched it happen. They're like, oh, I just forget it. I don't want to do it anymore. Right? But when I started making sure I was helping them learn resilience, they get knocked and then boom, they're back again. It might be a few hours of something not happening the way they want it to happen. It may have been, those last things that were coming in with clients didn't come in this month. And instead of being in the dumps for days and weeks and maybe a month or so, they're in the dumps for maybe an hour, maybe a little over an hour, because it didn't happen then and we're in a new month. It's not like some magic thing between one day to the next, from December to January. No. They're just coming in January. They're just coming, it's November. They're coming in December. And it's kind of looking at things a little differently, but realizing to jump back into the game. Oh, that didn't work. That marketing thing didn't work. When I met with someone, that didn't work out, or whatever it was. But jumping back and saying, what's next? Who's next? Let's go. That's what resilience is about. People can say ugly things to you online. Ask me how I know. And that can really take a lot out of you. But being resilient is like, and what about the other 99.9% of people who said lovely things about you online? Right? Learning that resilience is also about leading, knowing there's going to be haters, because haters going to hate. Some people, I swear, there's a handful of them that just have to go around and just be ugly. I don't know why, but there they are. And sometimes they come up on your doorstep. A leader is knowing how to react to that, so that you're demonstrating to others what they do in the same situation. So I would love to hear your thoughts about leading in your life and in your business. Let me know in the comments below. And definitely, I'd love to see you at Soulful Reset Live. We talk about this. We're going to help you work through not only the clarity, because remember I mentioned clarity. We're going to work through how to know, like, is it mine to do? Is it someone else's to do? Is it something that doesn't need to be done at all? We're going to go through all of those things over the 3 days and a whole lot more. You're going to walk out and your life is going to be reset. This is a huge red button, boop, reset. So that you're coming out and you are actually leading in your life and business. All right. So with that, I say peace, joy, love to you.